An innocent, kind-hearted larrikin viciously ed, as he walked through an Adelaide park in broad daylight, did nothing to warrant the uncontrolled and unwanted anger, a court has heard. Key points. Shaun Russell was ed in 2019. Shaun Russell was ed in 2019. Robert Patard has pleaded guilty to the crime. Robert Patard has pleaded guilty to the crime. His mother has told the court her son was a kind man. Shaun Thomas Russell, 36, was 250 meters from home as he walked through Hackham West Reserve after watching some of the AFL Grand Final at a friend's house in September 2019, when he was beaten to death with a garden stake. Robert Joseph Patard, 45, was in a volatile and angry state after arguing for most of the day in the park, and he simply erupted when Mr. Russell walked towards him, pulling up a large wooden garden stake and beating him with it at least 3 times. Patard pleaded guilty to Mr. Russell's 4 days into his trial, during the evidence of a key witness. Mr. Russell's mother, Dawn, told the Supreme Court her son was ed the day after her 39th wedding anniversary. He was a kind-hearted person, very forgiving no matter the circumstances, and loved having people around him, she said. He valued his friendships and often put their needs before his own. Shaun's death and our resulting grief has had far-reaching effect. Victim Shaun Russell's mother Dawn Russell leaves court. She told the court her son would shop with his elderly neighbors and help them carry their groceries home. We remember the joy he brought to us as a child, his larrikin ways as a teenager, and his times of clarity as an adult, Mr. Russell's mother said during her victim impact statement. Shaun still had time for a life to keep living. He still had time for hopes of a relationship and possibly his own family. Criminal history and drug use. The court heard Patard had a shocking criminal history, including assaults and drug use. During sentencing submissions, Patard's lawyer, Nick Healy, told the court his client now took full responsibility for the crime and was sorry. The fault is his alone. Mr. Russell, the victim, did nothing to warrant anything on him, let alone any attack on him, let alone one as vicious as this, he told the court. The attack was a result of Patard's uncontrolled and unwarranted anger, no doubt aggravated by his lifelong methamphetamine use. He's sorry, not only for the act itself, but also for putting Mr. Russell's family through those days in court, which must have been excruciating for them. Robert Patard had a history of criminal offending and drug use. Late guilty plea after evidence presented. But prosecutor Gemma Litster told the court Patard had maintained he was acting in self-defense, and Shaun Russell was the aggressor until after the trial started, and should be given no credit for eventually admitting the crime or apologizing. The circumstances of being a stranger in the context of experiencing your own anger about your own personal circumstances render this a more serious form of the offense of, she told the court. It's a deliberate assault and a very large act of violence. He was quite in control of his behavior at the time. He disposes of the weapon and dissuaded people from entering the park to cover his tracks. The trial was well underway, and the most significant evidence had been adduced right before the plea was entered. Police search Hackham West Reserve for evidence. The court heard Patard was a New Zealand citizen and would eventually be deported. He recognizes that he is going to be an old man at the time of his eventual release from prison, his lawyer told the court. He does recognize that unless he gets his anger problems under control, then any attempt to be released on parole will be futile. Justice in Bampton will sentence Patard next week.